apologize to anybody who's watching this video, if anybody watches it, that I forgot to start recording at the beginning, but I'll go over this on the next example again. All right, so we just found our axis of symmetry by averaging together our two x-intercepts. I did -3 plus 1 divided by 2. That gives me -2/2, which is -1. So x is -1. Now we're going to find our vertex. How do we find our vertex when you know the axis of symmetry? Same way you did it before. How do you do it? Plug it in for x. We're going to do f of -1. We're going to plug it in the equation every time you see an x. So this will be another thing I'd probably write off to the side where you guys have room, but I don't really have room. So the equation is -2, parentheses, there's an x, so I'm going to plug in -1 plus 3, and then there's another x, -1 minus 1. And then we just have to find that answer. Just be careful with your math. We get -2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by -2. So that's -2 times 2 times -2. Can you get out your calculator? Yeah. So we have the ordered pair, -1, 8. That is our vertex. -1, 8. Now remember how we talked about before we graphed any of this that it would be facing down and that it would be skinnier. Does it kind of look like that? Am I done graphing? Oh no, I'm not done graphing it. Because I still have to find what? There's still another blank in my y-intercept. How do you find the y-intercept? Make x equal to 0. So we do f of 0. We do -2 times 0 plus 3 times 0 minus 1. Just plug in 0 for all your x's. Get -2 times 3 times -1. So -6 times -1, 6. 0, 6. And we plot it. 0, 6. And what else do we do with that y-intercept? What else do I do with the y-intercept? To graph. Hayden? Yeah, that mirror point, that reflected point. Yeah. So that we have 2 points instead of just the one. All right. And now I have 5 points, so I'm good to just make sure it looks like a U, not a V, and connect away. Is there anything has there any time that I've said, I told you have to have at least 5 points. Is there any point where I said you have to have only 5 points? So if you aren't sure like what the graph does in the bottom half, if you're not very good at drawing these parabolas, could you ever just like plug in another number and find another ordered pair? Is that a possibility? I mean, that would require like that much more work. But if your parabolas aren't looking very good, that could be an option. What would you plug in to find another point? What x would you plug in? I'm going to do it. What would you plug in? 2. Yeah, I'd do 2. So I do -2 times 2 plus 3 times 2 minus 1. So I get -2 times 5 times 1, -10. 2, -10. And then that mirror point. So you can see right now if your graph was going to pass through that or not. Were you way off when you graphed it? Or did you just stop after I stopped drawing points? Did you just stop there and not graph all the way through? How'd you do on accuracy? Did it go to 2, -10? Pick the 10 up, graph to -10. So see how yours wasn't quite wide enough? Right. We're still learning the shape. So participate. I just took the time to go through that and add a point on. Do it. I did the work for you. It says check your answer by generating a table on your graphing calculator. Let's check our answer by putting it on the graphing calculator, okay? You got your graphing calculator handy? I'll give you a moment to get it out before I give you directions. At all? Okay. Walker? Come on. Okay, so to graph, we're going to go to y equals. You have your. I can see it. Go to y equals, and then it'll look like this. Does it look like that when you hit y equals? Do you have anything darkened at the top where it says plot 1? Okay, so we don't want that. So to turn that off, you use your arrow and you go up, and then you hit enter. And then you just come back down, and none of those at the very top should be highlighted. Or you can do that also. So go up to that one. And hit enter. There you go. Back down. All right, and then we're going to type in the original equation, which was -2 parenthesis x plus 3 close parenthesis open parenthesis x minus 1. When you hit graph, your window might be all crazy because we were using it for statistics before. Or you might have an error if you typed it in wrong. So I'll take a second and walk around and help you. But when I hit graph, this is what mine looks like. I mean, it should look like what we graphed. To fix your window, you can hit zoom 6. To fix your window, you can hit zoom 6. If your window looks different, you can hit zoom 6. Now, you should not be finding your answers from the graphing calculator. Because if you are, and then I say, this quiz is no graphing calculator, what do you want to do? Exactly. Does that make that fair? So after it graphs, after it like stops doing that whole circle, just go on. Oh, anything else? Yep. All right. Now after it graphs, hit zoom 6, and it'll fix your window. Who else needs help with their graphing calculator? Okay. How do you get to the table? Do we know how to get to the table yet? The table is right above the word graph. So you hit second table. I feel like we've done the table before in here, haven't we? Second table. And then you can go through and check some of your ordered pairs. Like my x-intercept was at 1, 0. My y-intercept was at 0, 6. My other x-intercept was at -3, 0. So you can kind of check the ordered pairs there too. Oh, okay, so you do second, and then T set, which is and then you just say where to start. Anybody else having problems? Go back to y equals. You don't have your equation in there. But it's not now. So you're going to put your equation in there. Anybody else having trouble? You go. Go to y equals. Did you graph it? Yes, that's what it was. So it looked similar, but it wasn't exactly the same, right? Now, the graphing calculator is a tool. It is a tool to be used to validate your confidence in what you're doing. It is not how you find your answers. Because in this course, you should be learning and understanding math, not making your finger button pushing skills better, right? there will be times where we do graphing calculator activities, and that's what I'm checking, that you understand. But in order to do anything higher level, you have to understand the math behind it. So we do it by hand and we check it with the calculator. We have to understand that those x-intercepts have a center, which is the axis of symmetry. We have to understand that you take that axis of symmetry to plug it in to find the vertex. But you have to understand that stuff, not just look at the picture. Okay? But I want you to have that tool because it's very helpful to check your answers. All right, let's do the next example. Yeah, let's do this one. So we're going to do this one together, and then I'm going to have you do the last one by yourself. So the very first thing we need to do is find the what? I didn't give you lines. What should we find first? The x-intercepts. When it's in the intercept form, let's find our x-intercepts first. So we plug in 0 for y. And then we have to figure out how to get 0 on the right side if it equals 0. So I look at all of my factors, and the first one is a negative sign. That is a number. What number is a negative? -1. So the -1, does that equal 0? No, so that one's not helpful. X plus 1, that one could equal 0. There's a variable in it. So I set it equal to 0. X plus 5, that could equal 0. So I solve them. And I get 2 x-intercepts. One is at -1, and the other is at -5, 0. And I went to my graph and I plotted those x-intercepts. And then you use the first example we did to model what you do next. What should you find next? What should be next? Axis of symmetry. Thank goodness you can read. So how do I find the axis of symmetry? What do I do with my x-intercepts? Average them. Find the middle. You could do it by looking at the graph, or you could do it mathematically. -5 plus -1 divided by 2. -6 divided by 2 is -3. X equals -3. Then I take my axis of symmetry, yes, Joe?
On the test, would you rather find original or actual?
Would I rather what?
Like on one percent, like would you rather do the actual original find axis?
I don't care. As long as you find it. And you found it, not your graphing calculator. As long as you can find it, I don't mind either way. But I'm going to show you both ways so that, like, if we ever have one that's at a decimal, then you could still, you could use the algebra way instead of the looking at it way. All right, so once we find our axis of symmetry, what comes next? Vertex. Plug in -3 for all your x's. Do f of -3. So we get negative, parenthesis, -3 plus 1, another parenthesis, -3 plus 5. So I get -1 times -2 times 2. My vertex is at -3, comma, what number? 4. Now, does that make sense with my A value? My A value is a -1. Does that make sense, what I've drawn so far? Is there any stretch or shrink? No. But it is reflective. And you guys remember your parent function points? Do you remember those points? We did like 22 of them once in one sitting. Do you remember that? If you know there's no stretch or shrink, I can already graph this. Because I know there's no stretch or shrink. But we'll just keep going and find the y-intercept just in case you're not ready for that. The y-intercept is plug in 0 for x, so negative, and 0 plus 1, and 0 plus 5. So negative 1 times 5. 0, negative 5, and then we plot it. And we plot the mirror point to it. And then we graph our parabola. And you say, this is like the easiest thing ever. I love it. And intercept form is my favorite. Is that what you guys are saying? In the next chapter, in chapter 3, we're going to take standard form, which is the ax squared plus bx plus c, and we're going to make it into intercept. We're also going to take the standard form ax squared plus bx plus c, and we're going to change it into vertex form in the next chapter. All right, so I'm going to stop talking for a moment. You try example 7. Find all the information. Make sure that when you graph it, that your lines don't just stop, but they keep going off the graph with arrows. And if you need to find another point to do it, plug something in. I'm multiplying -1. Oh, you're doing the parent function? I mean, are you doing it using the parent function? Is that what you were doing? Yeah, it's 3 squared is 9. Yeah. So use those examples that we've done to kind of model what you're doing now. And then up on the board, I'm going to work this out, but please do not just look at the answers until you've done it yourself, so that you can check your answer rather than just copying them down. You can make sure you're doing it right. So we, our A value is 1/4. I know it should be wider because there was a vertical shrink. It should be wider, but it's not flipped down. It's a normal flipped up kind. X-intercepts at 2 and 6. Axis symmetry right in the middle at 4. Vertex 4, -1. Y-intercept 0, 3. Find another ordered pair that reflects from that Y-intercept. How is this time? All right, we're going to take a quick brain break. We have like one more example to do after our brain break, and then we will work on our assignment the rest of the time. I'm going to pause this. Help me remember. Okay, so we have modeling with the quadratic equation. We've got, so you're at top golf, right? And the parabola shows the path of your first golf shot. X is the horizontal distance in yards, and Y is the corresponding height in yards. The path of your second shot can be modeled by the function f of x equals negative 0.02x multiplied by x minus 80. So there's your first shot as a graph, and your second one's an equation. You have to figure out which shot travels farther before hitting the ground and which shot travels higher. So let's look at this graph and let's talk about the things, the vocabulary, what we've been just learning about. What were we just learning about today? What did we learn new today? X-intercepts. Do we have x-intercepts up here by any chance? What's an x-intercept? 0, 0 is an x-intercept. Any others? 100, 0, yep, that's an x-intercept. Then what is 50, 25? That's the vertex. That's that maximum height. Now we don't have to write the equation for this one, but can you tell me something about that A value for this equation? It's negative, right? All right, now we have to compare that to this, your second shot, which you somehow have a mathematical equation for. On Topgolf, they have this new thing that tells you your mathematical parabola equation when you hit the golf ball. That would be really cool. Let me give them that idea. Make it educational while you're there. Okay, so what do we need to find from the new equation so we can compare them? What should we find? We need to know which one goes further, and we will need to know which one goes higher. So what do we need to find with this equation? X-intercepts and the vertex. So this may not look like it, but it is in intercept form. It is, because of that parenthesis. That's kind of the hint that it is. This is in intercept form. So I'm going to find my x-intercepts by making y 0, which is f of x. Oops. And then I'm going to think about this. How can I possibly get 0 when I multiply this stuff together? How could I get 0? Could negative 0.02x equal 0? Is there an unknown value in that? There is. So this could equal 0. And then the other thing could be x minus 80 equals 0. So you will have, I know there will be a question in your homework that has an x by itself and then an x minus or x plus some number in the parentheses. That is telling you wherever you see the x, those are the ones you set equal to 0. The ones we did earlier didn't have an x outside. So that's why we didn't use it earlier. Now, when I set this equal to 0 and then I solve it, what do I have to do to both sides to get x by itself? Divide by, you have a blue tie. Negative 0.02. So we get x equals what? 0 divided by any number? 0. And then our other x-intercept, we add 80 and we get x equals 80. So those are our two x-intercepts. One's at 0, and that makes sense because that's where you're starting your swing. And then it travels all the way to 80, which is there-ish. 80. So which golf swing went further horizontally? The first one, right? Now we got to find our vertex so we can see which went higher. So if I know my x-intercepts, how do I find the vertex? We're going to average them so that we can find the, what's it called? In the middle, what's it called? Axis of symmetry. So if I average 0 and 80, what's the middle? 40. Is that my vertex? What do I do with 40? Plug it in. And do you think I'd allow you to use the calculator for you to multiply by negative 0.2? Yeah, so if you need your calculator, we're doing f of 40, negative 0.02 times 40, multiplied by 40 minus 80. So I want you to type it in your calculator, make sure you know how to type it in your calculator correctly to get the answer before I put it up. Type it in and make sure you are typing it in correctly. You're just typing in the 40 to find the vertex, f of 40. That. You took that answer, but you didn't tell your calculator to do 40 minus 40 first. So, Aiden, your calculator does order operations. If you actually just type this in with the parentheses where I wrote them, it'll do the order of operations. You should get what number? Who's gotten it? It makes sense. 32. If you're not getting 32, you're doing something wrong in your calculator and you need to ask so I can help you. That's probably order of operations. So 0, 32, which shot went higher? The second one. So the second one went higher and came down. It didn't go as far. Okay? So our assignment is in the book. Are we good with this? I'm about to change page here. It's in the book, and I have graph paper for you. That is not what it is. I forgot. I didn't write it here yet. It is in the book. It is on the wall also. It is page 63. And it's all graphing, so I'll hand you graph paper. Numbers 53 to 60 all. We are graphing all of them, and we are also finding x-intercept, AOS, vertex, y-intercept. All the stuff we did today. I'm going to stop the video and then I'll put that right back up if you're copying that down.